Across many genres of games, the opening sequences often ask a myriad of choices to be made of the player. Choose your starter, choose your color, choose your class. Choice is one of the cornerstones of role-playing games, with each asking their own unique set of questions hidden beneath the stated one, all having far-reaching implications and often a wealth of radically diverging sub-choices, all stemming down from that one initial question: which do you choose? In 2002, Mark Rosewater, the head designer for Magic the Gathering, posted an article called Timmy, Johnny, and Spike, a set of pseudonyms to denote the psychographic tendencies of different players of Magic. To this day, Magic Research and Development often designs cards with the intent of satisfying the desires of these different kinds of players while simultaneously matching the mechanical and aesthetic sensibilities of each card to each individual set release. The analysis Rosewater made in 2002 is still among one of the most concise explanations for how players decide how they want to play a game within the confines of its rule sets and the choices presented to them. As one would expect, these choices are shaped by our personal history, our experiences, and what we as individuals find fun. Far before these predetermined biases are able to take hold, the design work of the people that made the game to begin with must realize their final shape. Character design and balance take place years before we ever get our hands on the final result. Characters are made, broken, remade, iterated, cut, added to, and reformed multiple times with multiple influences from outside culture and media and dozens of perspectives before the outside world is finally able to see the fruit of many artists and hundreds of thousands of hours of labor. And so when I refer to artists and show concept art in this video, don't take that as the only creative sources on this video essay. There's thousands of more people that I was not able to find accreditation for this. Today, I want to look into how art design and influence informs game design, as well as how the choices made by artists influence players, and vice versa. In the space of an action-oriented first-person shooter MMO Destiny, those choices are myriad. From subclass to weapon type to gear and perk arrangement, arguably the most important choice of all is the very first one, the choice of class, between Warlock, Hunter, and Titan. Today, I want to put the winners of the first Guardian games under the microscope, the Titans, and pick apart their armored shell to find out what makes these super soldiers unique and what makes them so critical to the history of the Destiny universe. Early Titan design was pulled together by former design director Joseph Staten and art director Christopher Barrett, meant to encompass familiar grounds of toughness and technology, and their initial designs heavily pulled from the idea of the futuristic super soldier, including such examples such as the Doom Guy, Master Chief, the Warhammer 40k Ultramarines, and Gundams, with some secondary inspiration from Takayuki Takeya, a mech designer from the Kamen Rider series. Titan armor across the board has an average ratio of 80% armor and 20% cloth by design, so that multiple pieces could be equipped and still make it easy to tell with just a quick glance that this was a Titan and not another character class. Upon the release of Destiny 2, the design philosophy of Titan armor was swapped from cloth being an integral part of the armor to being ornamental in nature, such as the feathers of the Phoenix Strife armor sets, the banners on the Shelter-in-Place gauntlets, and the fur cuffs of the Optimacy set, as well as the armor itself shifting from a rough, iron-forged, or battered metallic aesthetic to a more polished, exaggerated ornamental look. As the world of Destiny 1 was of a people lost to time trying to find their way in the wake of a metaphorical and literal dark age, compared to Destiny 2's reawakening of the Traveler and entry into a new golden age, it makes sense that this armor design methodology shifted to better match the aesthetic that the new tone required. Despite this shift in aesthetic to match the new tone, the shape language of Titan armor remained relatively consistent through both iterations. Their armor remained heavily blockish, prioritizing large chest pieces and shoulder plates, described by the art directors as having a heavy V shape, making them appear menacing yet controlled, seeming like a powerhouse with a measured fighting stance. Their closed-off heavy armor, the skin-tight suit that said armor adheres to, and the stoic, expressionless, backswept helmets all create a substantial amount of physical intimidation and all relay the idea of a juggernaut of a fighter, who relies on brute strength and sheer physical prowess. Their class symbol builds upon this idea of physical intimidation and blockish nature, and is a twofold piece of lore building and informative game design. The Mark of Six Fronts is composed of a crossed hexagon divided into 4 parts, symbolizing the 4 Titan orders that compose the initial defense of the last city, including the Pilgrim Guard, the Stoneborn, the Firebreak Order, and the First Pillar. And the use of the hexagon primarily commemorates a similarly named and somewhat self-explanatory Battle of the Six Fronts. This geometric design also informs the mechanical attributes of Titans. Their strategy in combat consists of three major elements: close-range aggression, defense of tactically advantageous positions, and a focus on enduring damage with their armor rather than evading it. However, the way that the Titan class is played is oftentimes at odds with this original design though, usually focusing on only the first aspect instead of all three. Between the shoulder charge attacks, the seemingly dominant use of one-dimensional exotic in PvP, and the bull rush-like nature of Titan lift mechanics, players often mockingly associate Titans with the antics of angry apes with little more brainpower than an animal. A far contrast to the tactical and non-verbal heroes the class pulls inspiration from, like Master Chief and the recent portrayal of the Doomslayer, despite these characters being capable of feats comparable to, or even exceeding, the brutality of Titans. The game itself certainly doesn't help present a different image for Titans either. Of the 28 Titan exotics currently available in Destiny 2, 10 of them directly serve to upgrade melee-based combat for either the neutral game or the super game. Several others indirectly improve melee, like Citan's Ramparts or Crest of Alpha Lupi, making your barricades into tougher defenses, forcing enemies to enter close range to attack you, or Heart of Inmost Light buffing melee damage, but requires a full kit of grenades and barricades in order to be used at the highest level of effectiveness. Still, looking at all angles, that makes the majority of the Titan exotic kit beneficial to the melee effectiveness of the character. Even the character subclasses match the nature of Titan physical attributes. Of all 6 possible supers a Titan can have, 4 of them involve direct contact with the opponent as a means of dealing damage, a far cry from the Hunter's 2 and the Warlock's 0. In addition, 19 of the 36 individual nodes within the 9 subclass codes, otherwise known as the skill trees, expressly reference melee abilities or melee-based synergies. Destiny's media portrayal goes one step further and has Titans shown as melee-based fighters with a heavy emphasis on fully automatic weapons, shotguns, and any large, loud, and heavy weapons like rocket launchers and heavy machine guns. Even extends to the 2 most famous Titans within the game's lore, Saint 14 and Wei Ning, who are known for headbutting and pledge to punch the darkness itself, respectively. All of these design elements combined onto one class often leads players to believe Titans to be virtually unkillable on the battlefield, but devoid of tactical nuance and capability. Simply, their portrayal is that of punch-hungry, heavy weapon-loving dumb muscle, the kinds of characters that would fit better into an 80s action movie or the Army of Two franchise rather than a space opera. One reason the narrative was spun this way was a seeming conflict between Destiny's RPG elements and shooter elements. Destiny as a franchise is focused on action and moment-to-moment gameplay, with the RPG elements often being secondary and at war with the FPS elements. The route the game designers took to remedy this conflict for Titans was to make them the frontline assault class, meant to establish an offensive either by sheer overwhelming firepower of heavy weaponry or physical strength, or by disallowing the enemy to establish their own frontline with armaments and fortifications. Titans themselves are not exactly slow or unreasonably tanky, tending to be more akin to a lineman in American football regarding their ratio of speed and size. In the early years of Destiny's existence in the public eye prior to its release, many made the assumption that the classes would be more heavily divided into typical RPG lines of tank, DPS, and healer. And this led to fundamental misconceptions about those classes within Destiny. A combination of tank stereotypes with the sheer speed and physical dominance the Titans display on battlefield resulted in disdainful mockery that often consisted of simple comparisons to apes, one of the most immediately recognizable terms for something strong and fast, but not necessarily as smart as the average person. However, this never really had any weight in the wider canon of the universe. This mentality that Titans are bruisers with little intellectual prowess is directly countered by the behaviors of NPC Titans in the game, the more nuanced armor and weapon builds they're capable of, and the overarching themes of physicality in relation to other influences that these characters could have taken. Titans, for example, aren't berserkers like the comically wide and bulldogish Cabal gladiators, rushing in with a ravenous bloodlust and no self-regard. Titans are fighters that revel in close combat, of that there's no question, but Titans demand it on their terms. Rather than rushing headlong into the opponent without thinking, simply for the opportunity to land a punch, they instead control the flow of battle, or even the battlefield itself, via momentum and battlefield-altering tactics and equipment, be it helmets that regenerate health on melee kill, detonators attached to void abilities that restore health and ability cooldowns, or summoning sunspots to buff allies and burn adversaries. No ability exemplifies how Titans are designed mechanically though than the Barricade. The Towering Barricade possesses 600 HP, making it 3 times as durable as the Titan that conjured it, but its slow deployment means it must be properly timed. If poorly executed, it will barely be a distraction to the enemy at best, or hindrance to the Titan at worst. If properly timed, however, it could swing a game of trials by ensuring a safe revival, or protect an ally just long enough for them to bank and gambit, or accomplish an objective elsewhere. One of the best examples of Titan ingenuity and battle sense within the lore is that of Holborn, the Titan who led the self-named Holborn's Host, a smaller Titan expeditionary force that took part in the Battle of Twilight Gap, and was also a main investigative expeditionary leader on Mars. Holborn is one of the most underappreciated characters in my eyes, mostly owing to how little his character is mentioned, giving him little opportunity to influence the overall perception of the class, despite his actions being a perfect example of a true Titan philosophy. In the lore tab of the exotic ship Holborn Splint, you can read the following.
So we're headed for the surface when we pick up this Cabal troop carrier coming down right behind us. This bottle can be the carrier, which doesn't have the most powerful weapons, but you know, it could definitely blow us out of the atmosphere. Plus, forget about putting down. So Holborn's on the horn with us, and he gives us this idea. Really, he orders us. He guides the engineers through ripping out our distant early warning array so that we can turn the listening mics into a broadcaster, and we cripple all the energy groundings in the array. Then we're like, what do we do with this? And he has us just dump it out the back with a timer we got from the gallery. It goes off under the carrier and wham! It sends them into the ground. He had us build an EMP device in 5 minutes.
It feels most appropriate to label Titans as combat engineers rather than simply frontline warriors, but to discount their honor, bravery, and class pride in combat would be misrepresentative of their identity in battle. In the earliest days of Destiny's development, the game was actually intended to be heavily, if not purely fantasy-oriented. There was little science fiction to be seen. However, among one of the foremost designs that carried through that original world design was the idea of the coat of arms. The hereditary symbols used primarily to establish identity in battle and eventually profession during the Dark Ages from the 12th to 17th century. While these eventually applied to all of the classes and can still be seen on the design of the achievements in the game, they most strongly translated over to Titan marks, which were used to denote many Titan orders, famous Titans, and achievements of grandeur. The coat of arms often emblazoned or embroidered onto them. Most famous examples of these include marks such as Honor of Comrade, Season of Ages 12, Valor's Golden Maul, and Freeholder's Memory from Destiny 1. Titan Orders, for the uninitiated, are self-organized groups of Titans with specific shared objectives. Titans of Pilgrim Guard, for example, were tasked with guarding civilians on their way into the Last City, while the Firebreak Order took an offensive approach to defending the Last City, by seeking and destroying those who would pose a risk to the city, such as the Fallen. Suggesting Saint 14 may have been a member, was inspired by, or maybe was the inspiration for the Firebreak Order, as he took a similar approach to the Firebreak in his crusades against the Fallen. To speak further on Saint 14, I believe he and most Titans, when viewing the designs of their class abilities and their class identity holistically, are most concisely defined within the Sentinel subclass, specifically the trees Code of the Protector and Code of the Commander, which is even more easily demonstrated by the Destiny 1 name for the Void Titan subclass, Defender. This is truly what I think is the best representation of Titans at their core, the point at which the artistic elements involved in their creation and the design of their gameplay intertwine most strongly into a cohesive whole. Code of the Protector, the subclass node, more often referred to as Ward of Dawn Titan, is a subclass tree where Titans are most able to demonstrate their offensive-defensive blend in combat and their unique ability to serve as both bludgeon and a shield for their allies simultaneously, charge melee abilities healing the Titan themselves and their allies, while also providing personal overshield to the fire team to allow them to keep up offensive pressure. The Ward of Dawn has also been essential over the course of Destiny's history, whether meant to destroy a high health boss or to survive bursts of damage that would otherwise mean certain death. Code of the Commander, though, the Banner Shield variety, is what I consider to be the most pure expression of Titan philosophy, disrupting enemy frontline, supporting one's fire team, and decimating enemy forces via munitions and engineering. Remember those void detonators I was talking about earlier in the video? This subclass branch is the one I was referring to then, as that ability is part of this branch. Its main combat strategy is resupplying all nearby allies with health and ability cooldowns, sticking explosives onto anything too close to any of the abilities the Titan employs, and deploying a strong offensive and defensive tool in the form of Banner Shield, being both an offensive stop to any would-be attacker while still being able to crush anything too slow to avoid a thrown shield or a self-thrown Titan leaping into the fray of battle, and still offering the Weapons of Light bonus to anyone close enough to the Titan's Banner Shield, making it one of the most mechanically and flavorfully tied mechanical implementations of any class this game has offered. Whilst the Hunters would seek to disrupt, subvert, and outmaneuver their opposition, and Warlocks would seek to call upon the light to make themselves demigods, Titans employ the overwhelming strength and firepower granted to them, and their arsenal of weaponry, armor, and abilities are the pinnacle of militaristic combat. One doesn't need to look any further than the symbology the Titan uses, that of a roaring lion, to see the amount of pride, strength, and camaraderie that these classes use, where their ability to destroy their enemies in combat is unmeasured. Thanks for watching.